beaten? What is the motive? What am I being corrected for? What is it that I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing? You can imagine what this does psychologically if you don't know why you're being beaten.
Lewis Hughes's mistress becomes for him an example of the way that slavery corrupts the character of white people. He looks at her and how she takes out her bad feelings on the slaves on a daily basis and thinks, this institution is actually bad for white people. It makes them into terrible people.
In the Cotton Kingdom, slaveholders saw themselves as members of a new aristocracy. They built lavish homes, bought the finest furnishings, and prided themselves on the elegance of their manners. Their leisure was purchased by the back-breaking labor of others. At harvest time, young Lewis was sent to the fields.
The daily task of each able-bodied slave during the cotton-picking season was 250 pounds or more, and all those who did not come up to the required amount would get a whipping.
Enslaved people labored from sunup to sundown, and when the moon was full, they continued into the night. Children as young as 9 picked cotton.
And now we had to start thinking about people as slaveholders thought about people, and that is as machines. You have to keep your machines working at top speed for as long as possible.
Having made their fortunes in the Deep South, planters turned their attention to gaining political power, becoming governors, congressmen, senators, and presidents.
Cotton and the slave labor force which made the production of cotton possible was incredibly powerful economically. And in the 19th century, as in the 21st century, economic power translated into political power. In the 72 years between the election of George Washington and the election of Abraham Lincoln, 50 of those years sees a slave holder in the White House.
It is they who write the laws. It is they who adjudicate those laws. It is they who enforce those laws. The United States is truly a slaveholding republic.
Though they had abandoned slave labor in their own region, Northerners were making huge profits from slavery. Cotton generated an extensive textile industry in New England. Insurance companies insured slaves as property. Many Wall Street firms got their start as middlemen in the cotton trade. Senator Charles Sumner of Massachusetts called it a conspiracy of the lords of the loom and the lords of the lash. The economics of slavery had torn Lewis Hughes from his family. Now he would find another.
People grab other people and they make blood kin out of people who are not kin. It's resilience, it's survival, it's a way to survive. It's a way to make a way out of no way, to create a family when it is being torn and split apart.
It saved people who were vulnerable in so many ways to physical and psychological abuse. Someone else in the quarters or in the kitchen who says, "Here's a little cake for you," or "How are you?" or "Help me." These are the other sides of these, not blood relationships, but kin relationships nonetheless.
Lewis Hughes would grow strong and healthy. The thought of freedom never far away.
I used to hear Boss read in the papers about runaway slaves who had gone to Canada, and it always made me long to go. Yet I never appeared as if I paid the slightest attention to what the family read or said on such matters. But I felt that I could try at least to get away.
When he was 20 years old, Lewis summoned the courage and fled, only to be caught and returned.
My clothing was removed, and the whipping began. Boss whipped me a while. Then he sat down and read his paper, after which the whipping resumed. This continued for 2 hours. Then he used tree switches, which cracked the flesh so the blood oozed out. It was weeks before I could bear clothing touching my skin.
Whippings often ended with a bucket of salt water poured on the wounds. In 1842, Harriet Jacobs had lived in her cramped, dark space for almost 7 years.
It appeared to me as if ages had rolled away since I entered upon that gloomy, monotonous existence. My friends feared I should become a cripple. Had it not been for the hope of serving my children, I should have been thankful to die. Dark thoughts passed through my mind as I lay there day after day. I tried to be grateful for my little cell, and even to love it as part of the price I had paid for the redemption of my children.
Why, for 7 years, almost, 6 years and 11 months, she can't leave? I must say, I don't understand. And researching her life, researching her biography, her autobiography, I didn't really, at the beginning, believe the 7 years. But in fact, we know when she went into hiding because we have Norcom's ad in the paper saying he's after his fugitive girl, Harriet, who absconded for no reason.
Now, after all those years of confinement, Harriet's secret was about to be exposed. A neighbor's untrustworthy slave had stumbled upon Harriet's hideaway. A ship captain, known for smuggling runaways, offered to help. Off the coast of Edenton, arrangements were made for Harriet's escape.
I was on deck as soon as the day dawned. I watched the reddening sky and saw the great orb come up slowly out of the water. Soon the waves began to sparkle and everything caught the beautiful glow. I had never realized what grand things air and sunlight are till I had been deprived of them.
Harriet arrived in the bustling city of Philadelphia. There she was met by members of the Underground Railroad, an anti-slavery network dedicated to helping runaway slaves. There were more than 500,000 free blacks in the North. Many of them, like Harriet, had left loved ones behind in the South. Harriet's hope was to find her brother, John, who had fled Edenton years earlier. She boarded a train to New York and got her first taste of racial attitudes in the North.
We were stowed away in a large, rough car with windows on each side too high for us to look out without standing up. This was the first chill to my enthusiasm about the free states.
What she encountered was a world very divided by race, in which black people were second or third class citizens, actually, in which black men could not vote, unlike white men. So it's a hierarchical, white supremacist world that she encounters in the North.
When she found her brother, he was working as an anti-slavery speaker, on occasion sharing a podium with Frederick Douglass. Also a fugitive slave, Douglass was one of the most powerful voices for black freedom in the country. African Americans, together with white abolitionists, were building a growing anti-slavery movement. In 1849, Harriet moved to Rochester, New York, a hub of abolitionist activity.
She follows her brother west to Rochester, and there she meets the most militant group of women on the North American continent. She meets the women who have just, in 1848, had the first convention of women's rights at Seneca Falls. And she becomes a very close friend of the Quaker feminist abolitionist Amy Post. And it's to Amy Post that Harriet finally tells her story. And a few years later, Amy convinces Harriet to write her story as a contribution to the movement.
America would have ignored the contradiction of